That's unfortunate. What's happening in Zyuranger? Oh, these shows need Jesus. In the 14th episode of the all-new Mighty Morphin Zyurangers. I don't even know what I can say about this matchup. This might be the most difficult combination I've ever had to compare. And no, it has nothing to do with my opening joke. I know what you're probably thinking. Yeah, it's another Zyuranger two-parter against a single Power Rangers episode. Why even waste my time? I know you're going to give it to Zyuranger. That's the thing. A Star is Born is not crafted out of a Zyuranger two-parter. It's made by combining two completely separate Zyuranger episodes that are 15 installments apart from each other. Actually, that's not even the whole truth. It also features fight footage from Smash It, the Mirror of Death. It also features a clip of Bandora from Terror Eaten in an Instant. Sure, MMPR has often reused footage from episodes it's not adapting, but it's usually generic stuff like summoning or combining Zords. This is more of a smushed together mess than usual. And while the Knuckleball of Infatuation, at least, is the episode of Zyuranger immediately following the addition of Barai, A Star is Born is actually one of the last episodes of Tommy's original run, as is Princess May's 7 Metamorphoses. Jeez, I've always known Sentai and Power Rangers focused heavily on combining smaller things into one big thing, but A Star is Born manages to take every bad episode and bad adaptational trope I've covered so far and combine them into the ultimate power. It has the diluting of multiple episodes found in Teamwork, the grafting on a completely unrelated plot of Switching Places, the dumping this way later in the season of Switching Places, the having to work around a lack of hero transformations of Female Warrior Scorpion, the forcing two villains into a single episode of The Revival and High Five, the monster with a human form of Scary Riddles, and the potentially objectionable content that Power Rangers couldn't possibly adapt of the Guardian Beast's Great Riot. Together, it forms the Megazord of crap. Just like with Green with Evil Part 5, I actually have a lot of sympathy for MMPR in this case. The Knuckleball of Infatuation and Princess May's 7 Metamorphoses are two of the weirdest episodes in Zyuranger's entire run. It's almost a certainty these were combined both because there was not enough footage from each to make a full episode, and because putting the two weird episodes together allowed them to blow through both at the same time. It is a shame though, because these are also two of the most entertaining and fun Zyuranger episodes. I would so love to talk about the boy insisting the girl he likes swallow his ball, the girl humping a wall, the magical horn that sprays love juice, the fact that cutting off the horn causes the balls to stop working, Goshi humping the sidecar of his motorcycle, and Geki breaking from his super serious summoning of his guardian beast to awkwardly stare at Goshi humping the sidecar of his motorcycle. Have I mentioned I understand why Power Rangers didn't adapt the plot of this episode? But since none of this content is used, there's little reason to talk about any of those things because there is no adaptational comparison. In case you've forgotten, comparing stories built around the same footage is the point of this video series. To everyone wondering whether I'd eventually cover seasons 2 and 3, this is what I worry every episode would be like. A bunch of unrelated things that I can't compare with only the tiniest amount of shared footage between them. The closest A Star is Born comes to uncomfortable sexual situations is Bulk's sunscreen bukkake.
I want to get it bath. I want to get it bath. I want to get it bath.
Where was I? The Knuckleball of Infatuation features Bandora sending out Dora Pixie, a cupid mixed with a baseball player who pitches balls into people's mouths that cause them to fall in love with the first person or object they happen to see. Like with the soccer ball clown, it is a rather odd combination, but this fits together a lot better. Cupid trading in his arrows for colored balls is quite an easier logistical journey to make than soccer balls that make you sneeze and also a clown who's a tentacle monster. With this setup, the expected chaos ensues. Dawn and Boy fall in love with May, May falls in love with the monster, and as I must continue to stress, Goshi falls in love with the side Zoroark 2. Honestly, I would not fault me declaring this episode the winner based solely on this face. This episode is so amazingly silly, and the potentially Freudian imagery makes it even funnier. As I've gone out of my way to point out, this episode features some very suspect iconography that I have a difficult time assuming wasn't intentional. But that imagery aside, this is all handled in a very childlike way. The effects of this love are ultimately nothing more than harmless chasing, hugging, and proclaiming "I love you" over and over again. There's really nothing overtly sexual about any of this. Because of that, I can't be sure the content is too objectionable for Power Rangers. But even if the subject matter was considered age and tone appropriate, the fact of the matter is there's very little of this footage that could be mined. There are tons of Japanese extras, the monster is a kid in a costume for most of the episode, leading to a straight-up child fight, which is kind of hilarious. There is never a point in the entire episode where all the Zyurangers appear transformed on screen together. Burai appears briefly, but never transforms at all, which incidentally makes it an odd choice to be Burai's first post-Evil episode. To adapt this properly, they would have had to basically reshoot this from the ground up, and if this was a later season, they probably would have. Honestly, I expected them to skip this episode altogether. All they can use is the giant robot footage after Dora Pixie takes on his monster form. Dora Pixie is rechristened Babe Ruthless, one of their cleverer names, I admit, but since they've cut out most of the baseball-related things he does, all they can fall back on is terrible baseball puns.
Play ball! Batter out! Try my curveball!
We've got ourselves a whole new ball game. It's bottom of the ninth and we need a home run.
The horn still reaches a climax, but I don't even know what it's supposed to do here since the whole love angle has been discarded. Like with the Sphinx, this more or less becomes a generic monster fight, where the monster just happens to like dressing in a certain theme for no reason. Before I go on, there is something here I can discuss in terms of comparison. As I said, this is the first episode of Zyuranger after Burai stops doing evil stuff. And while this is nowhere near the first time Tommy is featured in the same role, these episodes do illustrate the differences in how these characters are used and the hurdles Power Rangers faced in utilizing Burai's footage. The problem comes down to this one fact. After Tommy shows up, there are 6 Power Rangers, but after Burai shows up, there are still 5 Zyurangers plus the Dragon Ranger. What do I mean by that? Tommy full-on joins the group. He goes to school with the others, he's friends with them. Aside from his shield and the fact that he signed on later than the others, he's no different from the rest of them. Burai is nothing like that. This all circles back to that setup I mentioned last time. Burai can't leave the Timeless Room without burning down his candle. There would be little sense in him strolling through the city and befriending random kids when that would blow through his few remaining hours of life. Functionally, that allows Burai to remain a tortured badass loner who only shows up to help save the day at the last possible moment. You could argue limiting Burai's exposure increases his desirability among viewers. You could also argue tying him down to this one idea and function becomes a repetitive trope that the narrative only occasionally furthers. I think both are true. And don't even get me started on how Burai needlessly keeps his impending death a secret for so long. At any rate, Tommy has none of that baggage, so there's no built-in reason he would stay separate from the others. In order to match the footage, Power Rangers basically has to come up with a new excuse for Tommy's absence in every script. By the time A Star Is Born aired, the concept of finding a Tommy dispatching excuse was already so ingrained, it's literally the first line of the episode.
So Tommy, are you gonna go to the beach with us tomorrow?
I really wish I could. But guess what? I'm trying out for a karate commercial.
Yep, there it is. The original 5 are taking a beach day. Tommy can't because he has to audition for a commercial. Bulk is auditioning for the exact same commercial. In fact, his audition is before Tommy's. But Bulk does have time to go to the beach. Look, I never said it was a good excuse. I guess Tommy takes his responsibilities more seriously in this Goofus and Gallant plot we get. Gallant practices his martial arts. Goofus wastes time at the beach. Gallant is humble and respectful. Goofus is egotistical and makes a mess. Don't be a Goofus, be a Gallant. But because Tommy doesn't go to the beach, he's not present when the other Power Rangers are attacked. And because, in his one Goofus moment, Tommy leaves his communicator in his gym bag while he's auditioning, Zordon can't contact him to help until, you guessed it, the last possible moment. All he does is summon the Dragon Zord. Despite going to such great lengths to ride around its Zyuranger counterpart, it can't use even a single frame of Burai footage because, like I said, Burai never transforms. So A Star is Born has to reuse flute playing from Dragon Caesar's first appearance. The pronounced lack of Burai gets even sillier in Princess May's 7 Metamorphoses. He once again shows up to save the day, but I use the term show up very loosely. We hear the flute music, and there's Dragon Caesar! Burai himself never makes a physical appearance. It's like Zyuranger had run out of variations on Burai saving the day, so they just stopped trying. Either that or they wanted to prove to Burai's actor that he's so expendable they can fulfill his role in the story with nothing but a sound effect. I can imagine Burai going, "Geez, can't you guys solve anything by yourselves? Fine, I'll come out for 5 seconds to play my little song, and then I'm going back to bed. I'm dying over here." Princess May's 7 Metamorphoses sees Lamy donning various disguises in order to attack children with her tiny silkworm monster, Dorisilcus. Eventually, the Zyurangers catch up to her, but just when May has Lamy on the ropes, Dorisilcus coats May's dino buckler in its silk, preventing her from transforming. On top of that, Dorisilcus traps the other Zyurangers in a cocoon, which is then tossed into the nearest body of water. It's up to May to figure out how to defeat Lamy without her friends and without her Zyuranger powers. Lamy continues to come up with new disguises to trick children, so May does the same in order to irritate and distract her. The result is an episode that is primarily the 2 female leads playing weaponized dress-up with each other, and it is so much fun! It's definitely an episode you're not expected to take seriously, or possibly even literally. After all, May instantaneously transforms from disguise to disguise. Even the boys get in on it when they escape from their trap, despite not having the knowledge or time to do so. It's just silly fun. It's also the type of footage that Power Rangers really can't make use of. Again, lots of extras, very little transformed Zyurangers. This is why footage from Smash at the Mirror of Death is added in. There's so little transformed fight footage in either of these episodes that A Star is Born still has to pad itself out just to show that the Power Rangers fight in this episode of Power Rangers. But it does mean, like with Knuckleball, the story here is almost completely jettisoned. The brief bit of the other 4 Zyurangers getting cocooned is utilized, despite May not being present. It's so brief though, her absence isn't noticeable if you're not looking for it. Just to play it safe, they even loop in some Kimberly dialogue to trick your brain into thinking she's there.
Jason!
But it does mean one of the few plot elements they adapt, the Rangers inside the cocoon, has to be recreated with new footage, so that Kimberly can be there. And check this out, not only do they use their communicators, the communicators are actually visible on their wrists. Is that the only time that ever happens? That looks so weird. The other big change is that in Power Rangers, the Rangers use their blade blasters to blow open the cocoon. In Zyuranger, it's their thunder slingers, which we haven't gotten to yet. This episode is full of powers from later in the series, since it's, later in the series. This is already complicated enough without me getting into that. But since A Star is Born aired late enough, it could have used them. I feel like they're barely utilized in the series as it is. Maybe Power Rangers didn't have the props, it's not a big deal. Like with the Knuckleball of Infatuation, only the robot fight at the end can be used to any significant degree. But that's where the holes in this mashup really start to show. Remember, these are 2 completely separate monster encounters originally. They don't fit together. At all. And Power Rangers doesn't even really try to make them fit. Here's the rundown. Scorpina traps the Power Rangers in a cocoon. They escape to find they've switched episodes. They escape to find Babe Ruthless trashing the city. They hop into their Zords. Tyrannosaurus is in trouble. Tommy and the Dragon Zord save them. With Dragon Zord in battle mode, they impale Babe Ruthless. With the day saved, they hop out of their Zords and back into the Worm episode. At that moment, the worm grows big, so they have to immediately return to their Zords. They even log in twice, which is especially galling since they don't even log in to begin with in the Princess May episode. Yeah, they had to add this redundant footage. Dragonzord in battle mode is disassembled so they can form Megazord to match this footage. They fight and Megazord gets trapped in a cocoon. I guess Tommy missed the memo they weren't done because apparently he ducked out and sent Dragonzord home. He has to come back and summon the Dragonzord again! Since Burai is only a sound effect in this episode, they have to splice in the same flute shot again! And Dragonzord saves the others again. The Rangers escaping from the cocoon to find a new monster attacking the city works okay. Once the Zord section starts though, they stop bothering to logically tie these episodes together. They just run the fights in sequence one after the other despite so many beats repeating. It would have at least made more sense if it had been cut in such a way that they never left their Zords and simply decided to change modes when the second monster showed up. Instead, they jump out just to jump back in. It would be wonderfully comical if it wasn't meant to be taken seriously. The monsters are tied together solely by the idea that Rita doesn't feel like conquering the world today, so Goldar is in charge. I guess that's supposed to justify how terrible and disjointed this all is? Frankly though, there's no real story there. The bad guys are just throwing some monsters out. If A Star is Born is supposed to be about anything, it's Tommy's commercial on the teen sitcom side of things. For what it's worth, I've always remembered the stuff about the audition very vividly. My memories didn't tie it to any of this other crap, and can you really blame me? A baseball player and a silkworm have jack all to do with auditions, performing, Hollywood egos, or even the beach. This stuff, at least, is a lot of fun. It's hilarious that Skull slathers Bulk in mayonnaise rather than the sunscreen so that he shows up to his audition horribly sunburned. They even write a little jingle for the fictional mayonnaise brand.
Timmy P's Real Brand Mayonnaise.
Amazingly, I've never forgotten that jingle. Paul Schreier steals the show with his unique brand of martial arts. As much of a standard sitcom trope as it is, it's satisfying seeing Bulk's ego deflated when he's cast only to be used as the "don't let this happen to you" guy. It's a fun little diversion, but it's entirely devoid of conflict. I mean, yes, Bulk is bullying Tommy in a one-sided competition here, but when you get right down to it, it's just two guys who independently audition for a commercial. Neither one has any impact on the other. There's no tension for Tommy. Bulk doesn't sabotage his chances, his dreams of stardom aren't interrupted by his ranger duties, he doesn't even get camera shy. Everything goes off without a hitch. Say what you will about the grafted-on plot of switching places. As terrible and ill-fitting as that was, at least there was a central conflict that had to be overcome, and characters with shortcomings that negatively affected each other. In essence, A Star is Born crafts its entirety around an excuse to sideline Tommy. When you look at it that way, A Star is Born doesn't really have a story at all. It's a random sequence of unrelated events strung together. And just like in my Super Mario Bros. Super Show review, I can't help pointing out how funny it is when television shows television being made in a way television isn't made. This is supposed to be an audition for a commercial, but it's not. It is the commercial. The very next day, the finished product is on TV, and it's just the audition tapes from a poorly lit high school classroom. The footage is broadcast without the knowledge or consent of those involved, since neither Tommy nor Bulk had any idea they'd been cast until they saw it. I'm sorry, Tommy, but you've been had. Don't expect to be getting any checks in the mail. Finally, an odd coincidence that caught my attention is that for the footage they used, both episodes required Power Rangers to finagle around the absence of May. In Knuckleball, she's not present for the final battle because it's her turn to fall in love, so they use other cockpit footage. In Metamorphoses, May isn't present for the capture because she's the focus of the episode, so they had to shoot new footage. It seems to me this might have worked more smoothly for them if they had made this a Kimberly-focused episode, or devised some way to put her out of commission. Oh well. So, let's score these? I'm not sure if I can. How am I even supposed to do this? Fine, I'll just do it one at a time. First, let's look at A Star is Born versus the Knuckleball of Infatuation. For story, I already said Power Rangers doesn't have a story, so it really doesn't matter what Knuckleball's story is. It wins. For characters, Bulk is fantastic for what it's worth, and his deflating feels earned rather than the usual humiliate Bulk and Skull to close out the episode shtick that's so often used. The characters are definitely funnier in Knuckleball, but I guess it's not really the characters, and if I want this to seem even remotely competitive, I guess I'm going to give this to Power Rangers out of sheer pity. For action, what little is left doesn't make much sense. Babe Ruthless has random powers that we never understand. Come on, it's going to Zyuranger, it wins. Next! A Star is Born versus Princess May's 7 Metamorphoses. Princess May has a story, A Star is Born does not. Princess May wins. For characters, Princess May manages a May-focused story that isn't hitting you over the head to remind you that she's a girl. Lami gets a huge role. I'm not even sure if the American Worm has a name. Zyuranger wins. For action, I mean, look at all these awesome fights that were cut out. Look at them! Look at them! Zyuranger wins. Again, I very much sympathize with the situation Power Rangers was in, but there is no contest. These two Zyuranger episodes are fun and esoteric. They stand out in all the best ways. All Power Rangers can do is cobble together a few memorable scenes that ultimately don't tie together. It's still incredibly impressive that they were able to make 20 minutes of barely coherent television out of all of these different sources. But at the end of the day, I think it's obvious why they shoved this to the end of the Tommy episodes, so that more important upcoming events could make people forget about this. But I'm glad you didn't forget about me. Thanks for watching my comparisons of these dirty, dirty episodes. There's a whole playlist of me comparing other Zyuranger episodes and other Sentai series to their American counterparts, so if you're new, be sure to check out all the others.
Goofus clicks away before the video is finished. He can't figure out how to restart his router, so he futilely suckles the doorknob of the room he stupidly trapped himself in. Gallant understands it takes a lot of time and effort to make YouTube videos. He also knows the wonderful rewards he gets by supporting Mr. Fusion on Patreon. Don't be a goofus, be a gallant. I'll see you next time.